Well, the federal government is being asked to take stronger control of the agriculture sector by enforcing limits on the importation of GMO and hybrid seeds in the country. And this was the focus of the forum of discussion put together by an NGO, Let's Talk About It, and LN247 in Lagos. And senior correspondent Jacqueline Ogo has more on this.
Agricultural sufficiency is a major plus every nation desires to boast of. Many nations of Africa have that, but wars and internal crises resulting in bloodletting keeps farmers back home as hungry as others. Some Western nations do not have arable land like Africa, so they depend on genetically modified organisms and fertilizers for the production of hybrid seeds. Exporting this scientific intervention to Africa has been a major cause of debate over why Africa should leave indigenous seeds for modified seeds from chemically enhanced farming. Some voices are saying there is politics behind the type of agricultural deals Western nations present to African governments because they have their patent rights over the seeds they supply to African farmers, thereby restricting the spread of such seeds for the control of their own gains from the sales they make.
Promises given us from GMOs and hybrids have not really spelled out because year after year, you use more pesticides, use more herbicides, you use more fertilizers. Because one thing people don't really know a lot is that the major companies involved in GMOs also are companies that produce the pesticides and herbicides. So they tell you that they produce a seed that is pesticide controlled, herbicide controlled, but down the line, they're also creating business for because you find year after year, there's more and more increased use of this herbicides and co.
I've spoken to some farmers and experts who say that after using GMO seeds, it gets to affect the soil, the fertility of the soil. And so you might be having tons and billions, thousands of yields, maybe your first time, second time, and then maybe after that, the yields start dropping. And because your soil is not the same.
Some of this food modified, genetically modified, we're just eating them but no nutrients. You're being fueled, but you're not being nourished. When you're being fueled, you're not being nourished. That's malnutrition.
But there are opposing views which say if Africa does not have the perfect conditions for food production and security due to diverse hazards, it should embrace Western interventions.
So there's nothing wrong with GMO particularly, but a lot of people, because there are so many interests that people don't know about, there are a lot of hidden interests that are fighting some of these things, and sometimes they come in subtle way, as if they are doing it for your own good, but you don't know that there are an interest. For every interest, there's an interest behind an interest. So if you don't know the first interest behind that interest, you won't know the other interest behind the other interest. So that's why this, there is this campaign that's trying to paint everything GMO as negative.
The federal government is being advised to secure farmers and their farmlands as a one-step solution.
Whenever they go to their farm, they can be able to farm where they know they are secured. Definitely, it will increase farm produce and also make the Nigerians in particular to stop depending more on importation of farm produce.
To be independent from foreign manipulation, African governments are being asked to take control of their sectors of agriculture because the controller of the food basket dictates the tone of celebrations. Jacqueline Ogo, TVC News, Lagos.
And for more on this issue, I'm being joined by the convener. Let's talk about it. Anthony Ikoku, good to have you on the news at this time. So for your perspective on this matter now, how does the country balance the need for food security with concerns about environmental sustainability?
Thank you very much for having me on the news this evening. So for us, really, we are not entirely ruling out the GMO seeds. What we are saying is talking about sovereignty, and that is to say that we must understand that every time you buy the seeds, you must buy the seed from the person who's the seller. So eventually what happens is, as time goes on and become entirely reliant on those seeds, we find that we become economic slaves. So one of the things we actually advocating is that, one, the government should have research where we would own local patents to our own seeds as well. And then also, we also came to realize that there's still so much to be done in terms of production, especially here in Nigeria and in Africa. 65% of the arable land in the world, is here in Africa. And of that 65%, we find that there's still so much. Nigeria still has over 45% of land not yet cultivated. So we can't be talking about food security and saying we're not producing enough when we haven't even explored the land we have available to us. Additionally, one of the things we also mentioned is the amount of food spoilage. 45% to 65% of the products produced on the farms gets lost due to post-harvest losses. So we're like, look, rather than go this GMO and eventually we get to a point, GMO and hybrids, where we get to a point when we have handed our sovereignty to another nation or another, company or somebody else who is in charge of our food, we should explore other ways homegrown for us.
Right.
Lastly,
okay, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah, so lastly, one of the things I want to mention is that you know very well that he that controls the food controls the people. So a nation cannot afford to find itself in a situation where, it has surrendered its food control to a foreign body. And that's what you find eventually at the down end of GMO and hybrid. And that's the alarm we are sounding at a time like this.
Indeed. So, but how do you ensure that the imported GMO seeds now meet safety and quality needs with the concerns being raised over there?
Well, so that would be the concern of our relevant bodies. We have NAFDAC, we have the seed importation, and different other organizations that monitor that. Nigeria has agencies that monitor that. But what you just said is actually a very good thing, a very good point about that, because we don't have regulatory framework here in Nigeria, real regulatory framework that controls things like this. Now, I want to just add this, saying where you are, just addition to what you just said. The major food producing countries of the EU and Europe do not allow GMO seeds. Russia, Ukraine, Germany, Netherlands, France, they don't allow GMOs. Some of them consider GMOs as an act of terrorism. So, and then they have extremely very strict controls for GMO seeds. Here in Nigeria, here in Africa, there's no framework for GMO seeds. The companies that sell these GMO seeds have the playing ground all through to themselves. And this is one of the things we actually point out and saying that there should be adequate discussions if we're going to allow foreign GMO seeds, as they already are making inroads here in Africa. Then we must have control, we must ensure to that extent that we are the ones controlling how these things are used and the ones that are being brought in. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Anthony Ikoku, for your insights on the news at 7 this evening.
Thank you so much for having me.